Hey everyone, thank you for joining us, and thank you for those who reached out and said, "Hey, what's the deal, Mike? Where's for Mac Guys Only?" Well, I appreciate you sticking with us. As I mentioned last episode, we had some family stuff going on in October, and it turns out that family stuff just extended into November. Everything's okay, no problems, but attentions were needed elsewhere. So that's why we did not do a second episode in October and I guess a first episode in November. But that's the situation, and that's why we didn't do an episode the last couple weeks. Anyway, I see that Eric is attempting to join in here, so we will bring him into the stream as soon as I get a camera on him. A camera and audio. Oh, now we have a camera. Now we have a camera. We don't have audio. We don't have audio. I like the new lamp though. Oh, I heard a click. I heard a pop. I heard something happen. Something is happening in the back end. We do not know what. We've got him. He's talking to himself. He's got it looks like a leg lamp behind him on the wall. But no audio. What the heck? For those joining in the live stream, I promise we are going to get going with the show as soon as we can, because both of us, or I think Eric does, I have to be somewhere at 3. So none of this lollygagging around, none of this mucking about as we do. No, we got to get started, but we need audio from Eric. We need to be able to hear the dulcet tones of Mr. Erickson. But what the heck? What the heck? What the heck? Which, I don't know. Which browser are you using? Chrome? Probably Chrome. Do. I do not have you muted on this end. You are not muted. Yeah. Oh, there was a pop. There was like a real quick pop, and then you disappeared again. Whoa. Now he really disappeared. Well, that's all right. We'll just come back to me for a moment. We'll let Eric rejoin. I have to ask him what he uses for audio interface. Nothing. Not hearing you. What are you using for an audio interface? He's telling me like I can hear him. I'm wondering, okay, well, I mean, the obvious, the is it plugged in question is, does your browser have permission to capture audio? Maybe turn that permission off and on again. On the plus side, we got a thumbs up on no audio from Eric, so that's... I kid. Obviously, you can hear me, so something is working. And he's gone. And he's gone. He's gone. Never to join us again. I should probably just have him switch browsers. I didn't think about that. Well, let's send him a quick message. We'll see if that makes a difference. You know, it's interesting. All of this started, the audio problems with Eric started after Sequoia. I have not heard of any major issues with Sequoia and what we're using. Oh, he's on a different angle now, but not heard of any issues between Sequoia and Ecamm Live. Certainly, if there were any, we would have. I think I would have heard of them. Still no audio from his end though. Don't know what browser he's using. Oh, he has notification silence, so I wouldn't have gotten my text. I had texted and said switch browsers, Safari, Firefox, something else. Somebody's used Firefox before. I think Darren has used Firefox and it worked. Slurp. I'm just going to stare knowingly into the camera like I can understand what he's attempting to communicate to me. But that's all right. That's all right. Now he's frozen. Oh, good gracious. This is why we have to do tech checks. That's what they tell me all the time. Do a tech check. No, it's worked before. No, you got to do a tech check. All right. We'll do a tech check. Then we don't do a tech check. And we get this. This is what happens.
Okay.
Aha. Now there's
Aha.
audio.
Oh, now you can't see me?
It's not your primary mic, but you have audio.
It is my primary mic. It should be the Shure. Wow, it's really loud though. Hang on 1 second.
I can turn you down. Oh, you turned it down. Okay.
Yeah. How is that? Is that better?
Yeah, that's fine.
You're echoey on this end for some reason. I was just on In Touch with iOS last night and everything worked fine. So I have no idea. Of course, we use Zoom, but I don't know why that. I'm not sure why that was a problem. Because, like I said, everything worked fine last night with the same equipment. So really odd.
Yeah. All right. Well, there we go. You heard. Oh, now you're on a different camera again.
Oh, it should still be the same one. Sorry.
No, it just flipped.
Oh, it just flipped. Oh, that's weird. I wonder. I just turned it on because I was just trying to raise it up a little bit. And wow.
Is that that's what camera is that?
The Instalink.
Oh, Instalink. Okay.
Instalink 360.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Which I almost hate using because it's a little bit too clear. I like it when it's a little bit more fuzzy, and
I
so.
can blur the background, but only if you're using green screen.
Oh, really? Should I blur it? Can I
N-
blur it? No,
no, no, that's all right. That's all right.
because I can blur it actually. It's too much.
Nah, nah, that would be weird because now my background's clear and then yours would be blurry.
Yeah.
All right. So, yeah, you heard what I was saying. So, well, one, I was telling folks, sorry, we didn't have a couple of episodes there. I had mentioned last time out that we had some family stuff coming up. That family stuff came up and went, and then as soon as that was over, new family stuff came up, and it
Oh,
was kind of all encompassing, all engrossing, if you will.
yeah.
And
Yep.
I just let stuff like this slide a little bit. But we're back today, November 22nd, with another For Mac Guys Only, and there's some stuff we got to talk about. Now we'll save that for the episode, but so we'll probably go ahead and get started. But yeah. Oh, I did have a question for you though before we get started. Um, Down here in the bottom, this blue area, I don't know how many people, and this is a question for you, anybody watching this not live. If you're watching this after the fact, this is a question for you as well as it's a question for Eric over there.
Me.
Um, and that is, as I add chapter markers, I always put a chapter marker in that says start of show recording or something like that. I can't remember the exact wording I put in there, but show recording starts. I think that's what I write. Show recording starts, and you can just click that chapter marker and skip all this pre-show stuff, all this stuff that happens before the show begins. Because I know a lot of live streams, they go boom right into it, and we don't. we have pre-show stuff, and sometimes it's long, sometimes it's short. Today the plan is to have it be short, but um, would it be helpful to put a text reminder down here on the bottom of the screen that says, hey, to skip all the pre-show, use the chapter markers below, or something like that, like an actual textual reminder to people rather than me just saying, hey, use the chapter markers and you can skip right to the start of show. Should I put something down there that's up there all the time that says, hey, you know, um, to skip pre-show, use chapter markers below? I don't know if this is going to work. I'm doing this ad hoc, Eric. Let's see what happens.
Is
Yeah,
it not?
yeah, something like that. To skip pre-show.
Yeah, that's good.
Something like that. Just as a little, just in our opening stuff, um, just to have this down there. I mean, I could even jump to jump to the chapter marker labeled whatever below. Um, would that be helpful? That's the question. Would that be useful to people so that they know we're in a pre-show state? So this would be like the pre-show scene while we blah 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 blah, and then and there's hey, look, there's some good stuff that happens in here that it could actually be in the show, and I try to put chapter markers in to indicate some of the topics we talk about, but is that useful? I don't know. That's that's the question.
That's probably, they'll probably know that it's pre-show because I'll be fighting with my equipment, and they'll just know that it's still not live. Um, no, that's probably a good idea, actually. I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, I'll
Um,
just
and in Yeah, because it totally tells them the show hasn't started yet. I think that's great.
yeah. Well, we'll do that. I'm also going to create some scenes for our outro, things like the social media accounts and things like that, where I just read them off, or I recite them, I should say. But I should probably make like a special one of these scenes that has the actual handles that I use.
Yeah.
Although, where can you find me these days? I've abandoned Twitter. I haven't been I haven't been on Twitter since April 2023. Coincidentally, right around the time Elon purchased it. Um, and Facebook, I haven't really been on for a decade and a half. I
Yeah.
got an email reminder on my For Mac Eyes Only account the other day from Facebook that said, "Hey, remember when this happened on Facebook?" And it was dated 2009. So that, no, I don't. That was 14, 15 years ago, Facebook. I have no recollection of what happened. And honestly, don't remember ever using Facebook. So, I don't know. So, but you will find me on Mastodon, or at least we put some posts up on Mastodon, and oh, and I just created Blue Sky accounts this week. So,
Yeah. I was going to say they can find you there.
yeah, I haven't done anything with them yet. I just created them this week. I actually got an invite to Blue Sky a year and a half ago. You know how you had to apply to be invited into it,
Mhm.
and I did, and I got the invite, and I never acted on it. I don't even know when I got it. And I never did anything. And now with everybody in the world saying I got to be on Blue Sky, which by the way is the
Right.
cyclical nature of social media. Uh,
Yeah.
every one of these services goes away at one point. That's my experience. Every one
Yeah.
of them goes away.
Yep.
Don't invest too much time, money, or effort into any one of them because at some point it will disappear. Just
Yeah.
100% trust that to be true. I could name off a number of social media. Like Pounce. I loved Pounce. I thought Pounce was great.
Yeah.
And then there was a successor to it that stepped in afterward, and that lasted all of like 6 months. Um, but yeah, I don't put too much time or effort into them.
No.
More seasonal, more seasonal. Like when Macstock kicks in for next year, I'll start doing stuff on the Macstock account. But that's about
Yeah.
it. I'm not there that much. I know you're not on it much. I don't know. Did you
No.
create a Blue Sky account?
No, I haven't. I was going to, but now that everybody's doing it, I haven't done it. And like you, I haven't been on Facebook forever. Um, yeah, I just don't frequent social media all that much.
Yeah,
I probably should, but
smart,
I just don't. Yeah.
smart. Oh, it. I actually had someone parrot back to me the other day what I've been kind of colloquially saying for a while now. And this was unprompted, completely unprompted. I was asking what social media they're on, and I listed Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn and stuff like that. And they just replied, "Facebook is evil." I said, "Well, yes, it is. Why? Yes, it is. As a matter of fact,
Why? It is. That is correct.
that is correct. A plus. Um, No, but I just haven't used it. I mean, it's funny how Facebook has become less evil than some of the other social
I
media
know.
platforms out there. It's
I know.
actually okay now. No, I don't use it, and
Yeah, I was gonna say
it's
I don't know if it'll ever be okay,
I
but
right.
it it seems like the people in this household used Instagram and of
Which
course
is
my
Facebook.
daughter has tried, yeah, which is Facebook. And my daughter I know has tried to get off TikTok several different times, but still uses it, still is on it, and
I you
it's
know uh, I'm just gonna sound like get off my lawn guy, but I don't. TikTok annoys me.
I
I
know, you
and
know.
it's the constant like churn of videos and the inability to really focus or understand what's happening in any one of them before it switches to the next one. Uh,
I know.
and YouTube Shorts are kind of like that too.
Yeah, or Instagram Reels,
Instagram
another one.
Reels. Yeah,
Although I
I
do
get
have to
it.
say my
I
daughter does find some funny stuff, but
Yeah. Oh
it's,
yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
I get it. I
it's
get it.
still,
But
yeah,
let me enjoy the video I'm on. Let me enjoy the video that I selected to watch before you
yeah,
switch off to something else that your algorithm thinks I'm gonna like. And I
right.
no, I like this one. That's the one I wanted to watch.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
get off my lawn.
Yeah,
Um,
no, you're exactly right.
YouTube Shorts are like that. The weird thing
Yeah,
about YouTube Shorts is they'll show up in your view history, but then they disappear from it. Like they're in there very briefly and then they come back or go away. So they don't
that's
stay in
weird.
your view history.
I
They
wonder
don't stay in my
why.
view history anyway.
I wonder if it's because, yeah, that's weird. I
In
didn't
other
even know
words, it
that.
loses track that you watched it already,
Yeah,
and I that may be on purpose. In other words, if someone is creating a YouTube short and there's a benefit to both YouTube and that producer to have the video watched multiple times to get more views on that video. There's clear benefits to that for both sides.
right.
Perhaps there's a reason that YouTube doesn't retain your watch history of shorts. I never really looked into it. It's just a little curiosity. I noticed that it doesn't
I
remember.
wonder
It
if
doesn't
it's,
remember that I watched it.
I wonder if it's because you can watch so many that it would just maybe, plug up your history with a whole bunch of shorts or something. I don't
Maybe.
know. That's weird. Yeah, I did not know that they did that. I'll have to check. I'll have to look at that.
Oh, see, now I'm looking at this. I have to rethink this. It's not to skip pre-show. You can't skip pre-show while we're live. So it's to skip pre-show.
You'd have to add it after the fact, but you can't do that, can you?
No, not really. To skip to skip pre-show. How would I word that? To skip. This is why we need a bunch of people watching so they can tell me how to word them. It doesn't matter. All right, I'm going to turn that off and we'll get started. How about do we do that?
Sounds good.
Now
That sounds good.
I texted you the topics. Those sound cool to you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, those sounded good.
I don't have
Sounded
a
really good.
heck of a lot of notes on any of them. I'm going to kind of treat it like, well, I'm not going to say the title yet. I'll say the title in just a moment. I'm going to treat it like an actual RT. Um, you know what I mean by RT? Are you still
Yeah,
there?
no.
You don't know what I mean
Besides
by
respiratory
RT?
therapist.
You know,
Huh?
we do RTs, we do reaction times during
Oh,
Apple
right,
events,
right. That's right.
right? So
Yeah, yeah,
without
yeah.
without saying the title, I'm going to just kind of treat the first segment that I texted you as I guess kind of a normal reaction time. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens. How about that?
Oh, I forgot to send this. Okay, that sounds good.
What
I
what,
had
what was that?
I had meant to send that earlier, and I thought I did,
Ah,
but I
okay.
didn't.
Yeah, you that was all by hand. We'll talk about that because I was
Yeah, yeah,
uh, all right, we'll talk about that because I was super impressed with the results of this considering I put like zero thought or effort into it.
yeah.
I mean,
It's amazing.
literally, I didn't even know how the tool worked. I was just like clicky click. Oh, okay, that looks like it worked. And I don't even know how I got the mask to work. At first, it wasn't working. It was just showing what I had masked. But all right, we'll talk about it. But no green screen, no green screen at all. Just
I know. That is so sweet. Being able to rotoscope like that is so awesome, and not have to
crazy.
put in the time.
And I mean, I can't even imagine on an M4, but that was on an M1 Max, and it was just chewing through the analysis of it.
Yeah.
Crazy.
It I have to say, when Final Cut Pro, whether it's the tracking editor or the Mega, I mean, It goes quick. I mean,
It's
yeah,
considering what it was doing, it was going incredibly quick. All right.
yeah.
Let's get started. Let's do what we promised and actually get started here. Here it is. So we are. Ooh, what the heck? Mechanical pencils are my favorite type of pencil. That's what I use all the time. Specifically, I use Pentel mechanical pencils. I've got some drafting ones, like just really inexpensive drafting ones for on my desk,
Oh, yeah.
and then I have really nice ones with the retracting sheath and all that stuff uh, at my main desk. But these are kind of my quote throwaway ones. But they're technically drafting pencils, and you
Oh,
get them
wow.
in
Oh,
different
that's nice.
sizes. Um, and this is just a standard point 0.5. But when the lead breaks and you can't get it to advance the lead, that's
Yeah. That, that I love mechanical pencils, but that's my problem. I I guess I just press too hard, so I'm constantly breaking the lead, and yeah, so that's my life with that. But I do really like them.
the Pentel. I can't reach it now because I have my earphones in. But the ones I like to use from Pentel have a retractable sheath. There's the metal sheath at the end of the pencil, right? That there you can
Right, right.
that holds the lead, right? So it doesn't break. That's the
Yeah.
whole point of it, is so it doesn't break the lead. Well, the nice ones that I use, the sheath retracts along with the lead as you write. And then when you extend it, the sheath comes out it extends the lead just enough past the little sheath that people can hear my clicking as I'm trying to get this. Forget it. I'll go to my fallback. My fallback Clickster Clip 0.7 millimeter. I don't even know what brand this is. That's my fallback mechanical pencil here. Okay. Anyway, I have one that I really, really like, and I bought a couple of them, and then Pentel discontinued them. And I had been on a search for a replacement for ages, and finally found one that works well. And they were running a back to school sale, and I bought two of them. And
Mm.
they're good. They're good pencils. I like them a lot. All right. So I promised we'd get started right away, and here we are, 29 minutes in. Okay. Like clockwork. Literally. And here we go. We're gonna get started. I promise. In 3, 2, 1. It's for Mac Guys Only, episode number 441 for November 22nd, 2024. Retro reaction time. Hey everyone, welcome back to For Mac Guys Only, the show for the Mac community, where we share our thoughts and opinions on current Mac news and events. And joining me as always to discuss all things Mac is my For Mac Guys Only co-host, Eric Erickson. Howdy, Eric. How are you doing?
Pretty good. How are you, Mike?
I am doing good. As I explained in the pre-show, I wanted to thank everyone, especially listeners like Nick, who wrote in to check and see how things were doing. We had some family stuff going on in mid-October, and when that ended, we came back and more stuff came up, and it just took my attention away from doing things like recording for Mac Guys Only, which is, as Eric knows, always my rule. Family comes first.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, that's what happened. But we're back. We're back again. And for those who don't know, we normally do record for Mac is Only live on YouTube the second and fourth Friday of the month. And if you would like to come hang out and ask questions and be part of our live studio audience, you can be sure to subscribe to the show at youtube.com/FMEO TV. And if you are joining us live, I am going to be keeping an eye on the chat room over here on my right. So if you have any questions or comments as we move along, drop them in the chat room and let us know, and we'll try to address them here on the show. Well, wow, Eric, it's been a little busy in the world of Mac since our last episode, with the big news, of course, being a new lineup of M4 powered Macs, including an updated iMac, the new Mac Mini, and new M4 driven 14-inch and 16-inch MacBook Pros. Even more
Yeah.
surprising, though, is how Apple announced them. Because it was over the course of 3 days. Over the course of 3 days, Apple released the announcement videos that they would normally play during a standalone event, and pretty much let us take in the new products on our own time. Now, of course, most of us watched the videos as they were released, but it certainly was interesting for Apple to do it this way, I thought. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm leaning a little bit more towards the latter here, but do you think it shows Apple maybe putting a little less emphasis on the Mac, Eric, or could this be the new way forward for Apple's events?
Well, I think they did announce the M4 originally with the iPad, and
Oh, true. Yeah.
I wonder if it's one of those things where they had mentioned that they were going to release it in the fall, or release MacBook Pros anyway, and it would have been nice. Well, you know what? I guess the thing is they did release videos, so
Yeah.
they did make it a point to announce this and release videos for each computer throughout the week. And I guess you probably, the one part of it, I could see people complaining, like if they had some event that people say, oh, that's nothing new, it's just updated, this and that, and yeah, the Mac Mini is great and whatever. But so I suppose it could go either way. But I I mean, the Mac Mini is really awesome. But yeah, I mean, I think this was a good way of doing it for this.
Well, as I said, the interesting thing is they're the exact same videos that they would show during a proper
Yeah,
Apple event.
right.
Clearly, they filmed them, obviously, weeks ahead. I
Yeah,
assume. I assume every time they film them weeks ahead, they know what's coming.
yeah,
It's not like they have to listen to the rumor mills. But
right,
they film these videos, very high production values, and that's exactly what was released. The only thing we didn't have is someone like Tim introducing the video,
right. Which is all recorded too.
which which is all recorded too.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
so, all right, cool. I just thought it was really interesting that they did it that way. As I mentioned, they rolled it out
yeah,
over 3 days. We had the iMac on October 28th, we had the Mac Mini on October 29th, and we had the MacBook Pro, and the MacBook Pro, I should say, on October 30th. So all just prior to Halloween there. And
yeah,
you mentioned the Mac Mini and you mentioned some grousing, and I laughed a little bit because I feel like you may have been parroting me a bit as you were talking about the grousing. But we'll talk about the Mac Mini in just a little, which is an amazingly powerful machine, by the way.
yeah,
We'll talk about that in just a moment. But I did want to talk about, in general, what was announced, kind of the order that Apple announced things, and what Apple highlighted in each video. And before we get into it, I kind of want to get your thoughts on this too. But as you watched the videos, did you feel the same as me that it felt like many times Apple really buried the lead. Like they didn't
yeah,
put the emphasis where the emphasis should have been to appease users like us. Instead, and I'll mention this in a bit, but it felt like these videos were really designed to appeal to upgraders.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I definitely think you're right about that. I know it's I was kind of wondering who they were who they were meant for totally. And I always just figured that Apple goes toward for the masses and tries to make it accessible to all. But yeah, no, I think you're completely right. It was targeted towards upgraders and people um yeah, people that haven't upgraded in a while or even possibly people still on Intel. So yeah, I don't it's hard to know. But you're right though. I didn't think of it like that, but you're right. I think they did just kind of bury the lead on a lot of those. Yeah, totally.
And there's one thing in specific they just kind of glossed over and didn't really emphasize that they made a major change in the base model of every single one of these Macs.
Yeah,
And that
right.
is that they all come with 16 gigabytes of memory
Yeah,
now.
yep.
I
And
mean, really? That's
yeah.
what you just kind of brush off and say, "Oh yeah, by the way, they come with 16 gig of memory." No, this is what we've been asking for how many years now? We've been telling
Yeah.
Apple, dudes, you gotta make 16 gig the base memory. And here we are,
Yeah.
you and I, or me specifically, defending the 8 gig base
Yeah.
models of the Apple Silicon because they did run great, to be fair.
Yeah.
But come on, they needed to start at 16. And if anything,
Yeah.
this is really showing that it doesn't really cost Apple anymore to put in that extra 8 gig. They didn't raise the
So,
base prices,
no.
and now we've got what we've been asking for.
Yeah. And I wonder too if they didn't make a big deal out of it because they did make a big deal about how 8 gigabytes. Remember when they had that whole 8 gigabytes on the Mac is like
Right,
16 on Windows,
right.
and then they got all that kind of feedback or blowback from that, and I think they kind of just maybe they just thought, well, we'll just do it. We'll just put it in there and
Yeah.
not
It'll
make a
it'll
big deal about it.
it'll just be in passing. They'll now come with
Right.
16 gigabytes of memory.
Yeah.
And by the way, it wasn't that you were asking for it, users. We
Right.
we planned this. Um,
Right. It
but
wasn't
as
that
I,
it was needed.
it wasn't that it was needed. You didn't need it. We just wanted to put out more powerful computers. Just overall, we
Yeah.
wanted to show that we have more powerful computers overall. So yeah, we put in 16 gig, but it's not a big deal. Not a big deal. But like I said, it does prove the cost to add it is clearly negligible, or they
Oh
would have
yeah.
raised the price with the upgrade.
Yeah.
Um, but let's talk about the iMac because this was interesting. The thing that stuck out to me, and again, I'm kind of treating this like a reaction time. In other words, I watched the videos and just kind of took some brief notes in terms of how I felt or how I reacted when I watched the video. But what was the first thing that Apple highlighted with the iMac? It wasn't look at the 16 gigabytes of memory. It wasn't look at the M4 Apple Silicon. It was, oh, we released new colors. That a new spectrum of colors, which, let's be honest, are the same as the old colors, just a slightly
Right.
different shade. There wasn't wasn't really anything particularly new about that. But that was what they kind of let off with.
Well, and I think part of it is that again, they're trying to appeal to the masses, and I'm not sure why they think this, but I think you know they think a lot of people aren't going to be really, they're not really going to care that much about extra memory or faster processors and stuff like that. They're just going to care about the colors or
Yeah.
possibly the size of the monitor or whatever, which you know there is a fair point to that, but I think too, again, you know they really should have focused on more of the innards than than the external.
Yeah. If you really are going to appeal to those who jumped on an M1 when they came out,
Right.
you need to give them a reason to upgrade.
Right. Exactly.
And this kind of applies across the board when it comes to the iMac, the Mac Mini, and the MacBook Pro. But one thing that occurred to me is that Apple really kind of engineered themselves into a corner with Apple Silicon. I mean, the M1s were so good,
Yeah.
so much better than what we had with Intel Macs that I don't have a super compelling reason to leap to the M4, quite frankly.
Although I think the M4 is more um, is a bigger jump than any of the processors before it. And actually, I was just thinking about this when we were talking. Do you remember, like a year ago, before at a Halloween last year, they had their Scary Fast event,
Yes.
and it was with the
Yeah.
M3,
Yeah.
and it's amazing that they're jumping so quickly, you know, to the next processor. And I know with the M4, they really, I think I read someplace where they concentrated less on the power to, energy ratio, like how much, they've always made it a point that, all the Apple Silicon uses so much less power for, the electricity for the amount of power that you're getting from it. Whereas with this, they really kind of pushed the M4 to the max. I mean, they kind of really didn't care about that this time and really kind of pushed more power. So I think that is even sort of a little bit of a jump from the M3, although probably not that much, but definitely from the M2 and the M1. But yeah,
Well, clearly
yeah,
not that much of a jump because every one of their speed comparisons is a comparison to the M1 or
right,
to a
right,
PC. In the case of
yeah,
the iMac, the speed comparison was with a one of the more popular PCs that was an Intel Core i5, 8 gigabytes of memory, and 4 gigabytes of video RAM, which is really quite an underpowered PC
I know. I was
by
gonna
today's
say,
standards. So,
yeah,
to say it's 6 times faster than that PC is, it's not saying a whole lot because
yeah,
the M1 was quite a bit faster than that PC. And
right,
then the comparisons of the M4 to the M1 are telling too. That's really saying, hey, if you get an M2 or M3, you're probably not going to see that big of a difference by going to the
right.
M4.
It's
So
it's
when it
probably
came
like
to
20 some percent. Yeah,
yeah. Yeah, when it came
yeah,
to appealing to upgraders, they're really looking at those early adopters of Apple Silicon and saying,
yeah,
now
yeah,
look how much better it is. And
yeah.
maybe it's time to take a peek at the M4s. I know you said you had to step out for a second.
Yep.
Um,
I'll be
we'll just pause recording here and we'll be right
okay.
back.
Right back.
Yep. So Eric is just jumping out for a second. We're going to take a brief break in the recording. Yeah, it's certainly interesting. And, there'll be more features that Eric and I talk about in just a moment. But the items that Apple decided to focus on when it came to selling us an M4 iMac or Mac Mini or MacBook Pro, the order, the order in which they put the emphasis specifically on the iMac that we were just talking about. The very first thing on the website in terms of new features are the new colors. The second thing is built for Apple Intelligence, which, yeah, it's Apple Silicon, so it is built for Apple Intelligence. Um, the speed differences, as we mentioned a moment ago, 6 times faster than an Intel PC with a Core i5 and 8 gigabytes of memory. iPhone mirroring is the other feature that they highlight on the iMac page on Apple's website. And then finally, something a little bit new, the 12 megapixel center stage camera, which is great. I think that's fantastic. I think overall the M4 iMac is a fantastic choice, especially for someone who's looking to upgrade from an Intel Mac. I'm not quite sure it's the compelling upgrade that Apple wants it to be for folks who are on an M1. And I'm not saying that as someone who owns an M1 iMac. I also have the Mac Studio and I've got this MacBook Pro. But I do have an M1 iMac. And the speed difference between that and the Intel Core i5 iMac I had prior to that is incredible. The way that the M1 iMac can chew through simple video editing tasks that the Core i5 iMac just choked on. It's very obvious, and I do wonder how much of a difference I would see if I said, yeah, I got this M1 iMac, but I think I'm going to go with the M4 now. Would I see a difference in day-to-day operation? I would see a difference in terms of things like simple video editing tasks and stuff like that, but I do wonder if I would see a difference when it comes to daily operation. And I feel as if the answer to that is no. I wouldn't see a difference. But it really comes down to the tasks that you perform on the Mac. If you do regularly perform computationally heavy tasks, upgrading to an M4 may be a no-brainer for you. If your primary tasks are browsing the web and checking email and maybe some business applications, Pages, Numbers, Keynote, or even Microsoft Office, I'm not quite sure it's the compelling upgrade that Apple wants it to be. And it does sound like Eric is on his way back, so I'm going to go ahead and pause there for a moment, and we'll let Eric come back into the fold, and then we'll get back to recording again. I see him getting back into getting back into his chair here. So we'll let him join us.
Sorry.
I'll switch back while he's putting back in his. We were just enjoying the background noises while you were making your way back into your chair.
Yes. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay.
I can hear
Okay,
you.
good.
I was just vamping for a bit there. I was kind of leaping ahead in the conversation a bit, talking about the emphasis that Apple put on new features in the iMac. Specifically, if you visit Apple's iMac page right now, the very first thing they emphasize is the new colors, as we mentioned. They talk about it being built for Apple Intelligence. They mention what we talked about just before the break there, 6 times faster than an Intel Core i5 with 8 gig of memory. They mention iPhone mirroring. And then finally, they mention something that's actually new and useful, and it seems like should have a little bit more emphasis, and that's the 12 megapixel center stage camera. So there's a lot of features that Apple is putting emphasis on, seemingly to, as we said, attract those upgraders, the people who are holding back and staying on an Intel Mac, or maybe jumped into the Apple Silicon as soon as the M1s came out. Oh, now you're muted again. I heard you. No, I don't hear you. We had audio when you sat down. Ah. And he's gone. All right.
Okay, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. Your audio just completely disappeared.
Your audio disappeared.
Did it really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I like all of a sudden it was just gone and nothing I could do could get it back.
And so did one viewer. It's all your fault. You disappeared. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm
Yeah,
kidding.
no,
I'm
it
kidding.
is true. It is my fault.
All right. So anyway, you heard what I said. I think you heard what I said. Where
You said,
the last thing I had mentioned was that the final item that Apple mentions as new on their website. This is going to take a lot of editing, Eric. The final thing that Apple mentions as new on their website is the 12 megapixel center stage camera, which to me feels like it should be bumped up in emphasis. Let's not talk
yeah,
about Apple Intelligence. We know that that's built
it-
for Apple Intelligence. That's what Apple Silicon's for.
right,
We know it's 6 times faster than an Intel PC. We know there's
yeah,
iPhone mirroring. You told us about that over the summer.
right,
Tell us about the new stuff that's coming to the Mac. And the 12 megapixel center stage camera is that thing. The 16
yeah.
gigabytes of memory is that thing. So it's very strange, to me anyway, how Apple emphasized what's new or what they felt should be emphasized as new when it comes to the M4 iMac.
It's so weird because, like you said, the Apple Intelligence. I mean, they've been talking about that nonstop since the iOS 18 and
Right.
and in the iPhone. So there's really no reason to kind of mention that because we know that it's going to be on everything that Apple produces. And yeah, and the colors are fine, but like you said, they didn't really change any color. I mean, the yeah, what's so weird is it's like the big thing is really the processor and the memory. And it's just kind of, and rather than kind of delve into what the M4 can do, and I understand maybe they don't want to make a big deal about the memory because they made such a big deal
They
about
made such a big deal about the 8 gig. Yeah. Yeah.
but it's like, at least with the M4 and, it would almost be better if they talked about ray tracing, in the M4 than talk about a color or talk about whatever. I know it is perplexing to me, and I don't really know. I guess they must have really felt like they didn't have a whole lot to talk about. But just the fact that that they have the iMac updated to the M4, I think was big news because I mean, look at how long it took him to update it to the. I mean, they
The
went from
M3.
they skipped over the M2, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, so and everybody was starting to worry that they were going to give up on the iMac or not keep it going, and it, in a way, it is a little disheartening because I think the iMac has been such. If there's, it really has. It's like the one signature computer device, whatever you want to say, especially their computers that they make. The iMac has had a storied history.
Mm-hmm.
It is went from uh, their original multicolored, or actually just Bondi blue CRT,
Right.
awesome looking computer to what it is today. And while I think the 24-inch iMac is totally great, I would like to see them bring back a 27-inch or make a 32-inch iMac
32
and
inch would be
really
fantastic. Yeah.
just really push it. And I am so glad that they've done what they've done with the Mini and that they've come out with the Mac Studio. Like we said, we were looking for something like the Mac Studio forever, but I don't want them to lose sight of the iMac either. And it's kind of too bad in a way. It's more than just what they're saying it is, I guess.
I think what I hear you saying and what we said on the show before is when someone thinks about the Mac, they either picture the good old classic, Macintosh 128 or
Yep.
SE30 or something like that,
Yep.
or they picture an iMac.
Yeah.
That's what they picture when you say a Mac
Mac.
or
Yep.
Macintosh or, however you want to say it. And
Yep.
I personally feel that even though the iMac goes back to 1997, I think we can directly trace it back to the original Macintosh of 1984. I mean, in terms of function and form, we have a device that performs and works very, very similarly to the original Macintosh,
The all-in-one.
the all-in-one.
Yep.
And it is a bigger screen, and maybe like you said, maybe split the difference. Maybe get rid of the 24-inch and put out a 30-inch or something. Maybe
Right.
not so big as a 32, maybe not so, I don't know, 27-inch, so somewhere in there. Maybe just split the difference and
Yeah.
make that the iMac.
Yeah.
But some of the things that I did not hear go by until after the fact, and these were things that were highlighted on the, the feature card. I know you had another word for that, but
Feature quilt.
feature quilt, the feature quilt.
Yeah.
The availability of a nano texture glass on the
Oh,
iMac
yeah. They're putting that in everything
is
now.
big.
Yep.
They had the other things they mentioned, like iPhone mirroring. That's software. That's not iMac.
Yeah.
That's
It
not,
has nothing to do with the.
Apple
Yeah.
Intelligence. That's software. It has nothing really to do with the iMac itself, other than the Apple Silicon inside.
And it's on every Mac.
It's on every Mac.
Yeah.
So nano
So
texture glass, the center stage camera, and another thing I don't remember being mentioned during the video. I may have missed it. I may have had my focus elsewhere when they said this, but the keyboard and mouse are now USB-C, which is something that
yeah,
people have been asking for forever.
for a long time. Yep.
And then support for additional displays. I think it will now support up to 2 additional displays. Is that?
Oh, that's a big deal.
That's a huge deal.
Yeah.
That's a very
Yeah.
big deal. And so these are some of the things that are kind of buried on Apple's site when you go to look at it. And again, I think it's because they're primarily looking to pull people over to the M4 iMac who maybe are still on an Intel iMac or a first generation Apple Silicon, an M1. And that's who they're looking to bring into the fold. But let's talk about October 29th. This new Mac Mini is an interesting device. The emphasis again on Apple's part is ultra compact design. Clearly, we're talking 5 inches on edge, right?
Yep.
Front and back ports, again, huge. That's something that they emphasize on the site for the Mac Mini, which is super, super nice to have 2 USB-C / Thunderbolt. Are they Thunderbolt on the front, or are they only Thunderbolt on the back?
The only Thunderbolt in the back, but Thunderbolt
back.
5, no less. Yeah.
But Thunderbolt 5, yeah. So, new hardware feature there. So USB-C on the front, headphone jack on the front. Isn't that the headphone jack over on the right with the next to the power light?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
I think it might be.
Yep.
I think that's the headphone jack.
You're right.
And then on the back, a little loss. We lost the USB-A ports, which is kind of sad.
Yeah.
But there's 3 Thunderbolt 5,
5,
HDMI, Ethernet, and power.
Yep.
Missing, of course, my complaint, a power button, which Apple conveniently located on the bottom. Now, I did hear an argument in favor of that. Not the argument that Darren made. That was a good argument. But I did hear another argument in favor of that I'll talk about in just a moment. But I personally feel that's kind of a weird decision. We've seen the teardowns. We've seen how thin the button is. We've seen how it's positioned within the case. I don't understand why it couldn't be put on the back as it was on previous models, but this is where we are. We
Yeah.
have the charging port on the bottom of the mouse, and we have the power button on the bottom of the Mac Mini.
Although I will say the power button on the bottom of the Mac Mini is not the scandal that the charger is on the bottom of the mouse, just because you
True.
really don't use
You
it
can
that
use it. Yeah.
much. Yeah.
You, you can't use the mouse when it's charging, but you can use,
Right.
yes. So my issue with it is one of convenience, and that is my I have a Mac Studio, mind you, and it's tucked nice and neatly into a little nook of my desk. It would be impossible for me to get my hand back, not only back behind the computer, but underneath it in order to reach that power button. I just,
Yeah.
in that regard, I
It's
find it
that.
weird.
Yeah.
Now it's even tighter because I have it stacked on top of an OWC mini stack um, external chassis, within which
Right.
I've got an 8 terabyte hard drive and a 2 terabyte SSD, and that's connected via Thunderbolt to the back of the Mac Studio. So again, the Mac
Hmm.
Studio is sitting on top of this, which, and granted, I could flip flop them, but it's sitting on top of the mini stack, and that would make it all the more difficult to reach that power button underneath. Now, the argument I heard in favor of it comes from the professional side of the user base, and that is that many pros mount them under their desks. They have
Oh,
little mounts
right.
that
Yeah.
they mount the Mac Mini on, underneath the ledge of their desk, and having the power button on the bottom is actually much more convenient for them.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
get that. That is a great compelling argument to have it on the bottom versus
Yeah.
on the back when you mount them underneath your desk. So, everybody's
Right.
going to have a different take on it. I just thought it was weird. I thought it was a weird decision. Uh, Darren, one of our co-hosts here on the show, who joins us from time to time, said, "Wouldn't it have been great if they had a touch-sensitive power on the top? Maybe the Apple logo. Make that the power button." Which, of
Yeah.
course, as I mentioned in the email back, which I think you saw, Eric, harkens back to the G4 Cube. That had
Yeah.
a
Right.
touch-sensitive power button on the
Yeah.
top. It wasn't the logo,
Yeah.
but it had a touch-sensitive button, which they indicated, they marked on the top of the case with, of all things, a sticker. It's
Yeah.
basically a sticker they put on top to say "touch here." But
Yeah.
that was a wonderfully designed Mac,
Oh, I
despite the
love the cube.
the alleged cracking issues and things like that. Things I didn't experience with it, but that was
Yeah.
a great Mac, and I loved how easy it was to maintain, and you just push the handle and it pops up and you suck the innards out
Yeah.
of the case, and oh, it was great. But the touch
Yeah.
sensitive button on the top was super cool, and doing something like that with the Mac Mini would have been just a nice touch, a nice
That would have
elegant
been
touch. And
really, yeah, a really nice touch.
so,
That I
good
didn't even
suggestion,
think of
Darren.
that.
They need to contact him next time they're
Yes.
working on the Mac Mini design.
I wonder how long it'll be maybe before somebody has something on Etsy that you attach to the bottom and maybe side of your Mac Mini, and you can push the button this way, but then it like pushes the bottom power button so that you don't actually have to like reach around the back or something.
Are you saying, "I wonder how long," or are you saying that because you know it exists? There's
No, I'm
actually,
just saying wonder a lot.
yeah, no, there are 3D designs, for 3D
Are
printers that you can download for free, run off on your 3D printer, attach it to the back of your Mac, and it does exactly that. You have a little top button, you push it, and it's like a little rocker, and it rocks up and pushes the power button on the bottom. So,
Oh, sweet.
yep, it
That's awesome.
already exists. It
Already
already
there.
exists. Yep.
I have to get a 3D printer. That I know. I know you've got one. That's sweet.
But let's talk about the Mac Mini, not form and function. No, not
Yeah.
form, but function. This just blows away every other Mac Mini that come before it.
Yeah.
It's an incredibly powerful computer, especially the M4 Pro model.
Yeah.
And I have that M2 Pro Mac Mini, and it is itself a little powerhouse.
Yeah.
And the very first thought I had when I saw this is, oh gosh, I got to replace that M2 Pro with this one, don't I? I will say the lack of USB-A ports would be a little bit of a problem for me, only in that would mean I now would need to get yet another hub for the back of it.
Right.
Things that I could previously plug into those USB-A ports, I can no longer do, so I have to find some other way to do it. But other than that, man, would this thing just blow it away?
Oh, yeah. No, it's pretty slick. It really, I even kind of think that the base, just the base M4 16 gigabyte, maybe with the 512, I always
Mm-hmm.
like to have a little bit more storage, but
Yeah.
uh, it just that. I wonder how that would compare even like to like the M2 Pro, just having that. I know my cousin got one pretty much right away. He ordered it when it became available, and you just got the base one for music.
Mm-hmm.
He
Mm-hmm.
has kind of a little mini studio, and he needed he had like a 2011 or 2010 MacBook Pro that was on its last leg, and so he just replaced it with this, and he didn't think, well, I'm just doing audio, I'm just working with Logic and whatnot. I shouldn't have to have much more than 16 gig and
Right.
and the M4 Pro for that. So, but it is just an amazing little machine, and I just wonder, like all the Mac Minis that came before it, where people, I mean, I know Apple originally came out with the Mac Mini for switchers,
Mm-hmm.
and but they built it so well that Mac users, existing Mac users, found other uses for it, whether it was for an entertainment center or a server farm or whatever else. And I just wonder what eventually, like this new, smaller, more powerful Mac Mini will end up getting used for that we really didn't think of, just because it now fits, because it now has enough power to do this, and it's now even smaller, whatnot. Who knows? I don't know, but it is pretty slick.
The previous model fit in the palm of your hand. This
Yeah.
literally fits in the palm of your hand. The design
Yeah.
is all but identical to the Mac Studio, by the way.
It,
Uh,
it
the
is.
the previous model Mac Mini didn't have the cooling venting on the bottom. It pulls the air in and pushes it out the. Wait, no, the Mac Mini is different. The Mac Studio pulls it in on the bottom and pushes it out the
Right.
back. The Mac
Yeah.
Mini pulls it in and pushes it out through the venting on the bottom.
Bottom. Yeah.
It does not have the back venting like the Mac Studio has. Um, but it's a it's just a fantastic computer all around.
It is.
The M4 Pro, I think the only thing that really has me considering the M4 model now is that when I purchased the M2 Pro, because it was used for video production, it was used for live video production at Macstock, I opted to put a 2 terabyte SSD into it, but I stuck with 16 gig of memory. I did not bump to the next level of memory.
Mm. Yeah.
And that I realized with Macstock 8 in this last summer 2024, I realized that some of the stuff we were trying to do at Macstock, specifically ISO recording of the video from the different cameras, did cause that M2 Pro to choke a little bit, and I believe it was all because of the lack of
The
memory.
16.
With a bit more memory, I believe it would have handled it quite quite well. So
And now the
that
M4
is,
Pro has 24 gig, right? It comes
yeah,
with 24. Yeah.
yeah. I think it starts at 24, doesn't it, or does it start
That
at
that's what I
16?
mean. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, the Pro does. Yeah.
The Pro does. Yeah, the Pro starts
Yep.
at that. The M4 starts at 16. The M4 Pro
Yeah.
starts at 24. So even the 24, the extra 8
Yeah, it would
may
be a
be
huge
enough to
right.
offset some of the issues that I had with the M2 Pro prior. But that's what I mentioned earlier. Apple has really engineered themselves into a corner with Apple Silicon because they can come out with new models every year and they can show the incremental performance improvements that you get from, let's say, an M3 to an M4 or an M2 Pro to an M4 Pro or what have you. But they have to go 3 generations back to to really show you some substantial improvements.
Right,
Now,
right.
that's in general usage. I'm not talking about specific, pro usage situations, Final Cut Pro and Logic and things like that, where you can clearly, or gaming even, gaming performance in certain situations, you're going to see much higher performance improvements. But in day to day operation, to say, oh, yeah, gosh, you're going to be able to browse the web so much faster or
Yeah.
check your email so much faster. It's a tough sell when it
Yeah.
comes to the Apple Silicon models, and it was not that tough of a sell when they were bumping from, let's say, an Intel Core i3 to a Core i7 or even to a Core i9. There were very definite, visible improvements just in day-to-day usage. I'm not sure that the average user is going to see those with the new models. But
Well,
with specific use case scenarios, absolutely you're going to see it. And with things like being able to drive 3 displays and the Thunderbolt 5 ports for better expansion and speedier expansion of the Mac Mini, uh, just a fantastic computer. And the one reason I think that 30-inch or 32-inch iMac will never exist because we have this Mac Mini.
yeah. No, I think you're totally right. And the one thing I think I think you're right in the sense that Apple's probably back themselves into a corner with Apple Silicon because it is so fast and it does, these incremental improvements are going to be just that. But I also think that a lot of this depends upon, um, Apple Intelligence or AI stuff and how big of a deal that becomes in the future and how much of
Mm,
that takes over certain things. I think because that takes quite a bit of power,
it does.
um, and the Neuro, obviously the Neuro um, part of the having trouble thinking of the part of
The neural engine.
the yeah, the neural engine, right? And so I think that could play a part of it. The other thing is, especially on the higher end with like the Mac Studio and the Mac Pro, if they keep that going, obviously they could add more cores and add more, you know, transcoding codecs type stuff to the processors to make it go faster for professionals and whatever. But and the other thing I think they could do too is do what I said before, focus on power rather than efficiency. You
Mm,
know, really push that because I think there's enough room there, especially for bigger machines, or even even really for the Mac Mini for desktop machines where they could up the power and not worry about efficiency so much and still have a heck of a you know power sipping processor, however you want to say it, but it's so much faster than maybe just the generation before or maybe 2 generations before. But Apple's kind of been here before, even with the iPhone. You can't. I mean, when you upgrade every year, like I do, you don't necessarily see the big changes. But if you had an iPhone 10 and now you upgraded to an iPhone 16, there's a whole lot of changes. There's a whole lot of
Mm,
stuff that's
mm-hmm.
that's changed, and now it seems almost different. But you don't have those big changes every year. I mean, the iPhone, going from the iPhone 7, I think it was, to the iPhone 10. They came out with the iPhone 10 and the iPhone 8, I think, the same year. But that was a big change, going to the Face ID without the home button and all that stuff. But otherwise, that doesn't normally happen. But I do think, um, you know, I think for the most part, people even with Intel processors kept their machines forever. Even especially Macs.
I still know
So
quite a few who do.
yeah, exactly. It works.
Yeah.
Why fix it? It's doing what I need it to do. And so what if the new one can do a little, a few times faster? Like I said, I think a lot of it'll depend upon if AI really comes about and it really is a game changer for the average user. Like, oh, now AI can help me do this a lot faster, much more than what it is today, much more than just summarizing something or helping you rewrite a paragraph in using words you would never use. Um, much more than that. If it really becomes something, then the power that's needed for that, I think, certainly Apple will do well selling more hardware for that. But you're right. I think in a way they kind of have backed themselves in a corner.
But in fairness to Apple, what I hear you saying is it's more than apt to be making these comparisons to the M1 iMac and the M1 Mac Mini and MacBook Pros because in three subsequent generations there have been enough improvements that maybe the daily user will see a difference.
Yeah, and I think too that they're thinking most people aren't going to upgrade every year. I've got an M3 or I've got an M2. I now need to get a new iMac. Perfect example. My mom has an M3 iMac.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
No need to upgrade.
that No need to upgrade. Yeah,
No.
exactly. In her case, she's got 16 gig of memory because I said you need 16 gig.
Right.
But
Spend the 200
it's
bucks. Yeah.
right. But but again, when they have the M7 or M8, you know, whatever that is, then it might be, jumping from the M3 to that. Yeah, it should be a big jump.
Yeah. Yeah. Tech spec wise, we already mentioned most of the big advantages of the Mac Mini: Thunderbolt 5 ports, the ability to drive three displays, the M4, M4 Pro. Um, yeah, that's it. That's the Mac Mini. And compared to what was offered before, which I believe was the M2, we didn't have an M3 Mac Mini.
No,
So
no.
this was a jump, a big jump for anyone who had the M2. It definitely is either worth looking at as a replacement or to augment what you have. And that
Plus,
was someone else I heard said they had like 10 Mac Minis in their studio, some of them Intel models, and each of them dedicated to doing something that
wow,
uh, they could offload tasks to the older models, and I think
that's nice.
that's an absolutely great use for an old one. In fact, there's an older Mac Mini at my office that I intend to turn into a virtualization machine because the virtualization on Apple Silicon just is not that great. So, not that great when it comes to virtualizing or emulating x86. I'm going to clarify that before I get a letter from Darren. Um, uh, Various Linuxes and older editions of
Right.
Windows that I may need to offer support on from time to time and things like that, or just want to play with. Or maybe I have an old game and I just want to play with it, that sort of thing. Um, Being able to do x86 virtualization on an Intel Core i5 Mac Mini that I've got sitting there, which is more than capable of doing it, is a great use for that old machine.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
And then
Sure
when it
is.
comes to running ARM versions of Windows or ARM versions of Linux, well, sure, I can do that on Apple Silicon. But when it
Right.
comes to doing something older, that's a great use for it. And being able to remote desktop right into it and have access to it is perfect for me. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
my intent for an old Mac Mini at the office.
And I think somebody said Amazon has the new Mac Minis. I think the base models for $499
They already have
or
them on
something like that.
sale. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
crazy.
that's insane.
It's
That's
crazy.
just great right there.
Well, the last Mac that, or series of Macs, I should say, because there's two models that Apple introduced at the end of October, is the MacBook Pro. That announcement came on October 30th. The highlights that Apple shared with us include, built for Apple Intelligence, the three models of M4 Apple Silicon, M4, M4 Pro, and M4 Max. The longest, crazy long battery life. They're talking about upwards of 24-hour battery life in some
Yeah.
models under certain usage situations. And I should probably mention, as you look at these specs on Apple's site, make sure you go down and read the footnotes. They tell you exactly under what conditions they did these tests, how on earth
Right.
they got 24 hours of battery life out of a MacBook Pro. Well, here's how. Um,
Yeah.
Anyway, longest battery life, upwards of 24 hours. Liquid Retina XDR display, 12 megapixel center stage camera. And then the speed comparisons were again made with M1 series MacBook Pros, and they mentioned a 3.4 times speed increase over the M1, a 3 times speed increase over the M1 Pro, and a 3.5 speed increase over the M1 Max. So those are actually currently the highlighted new features of the MacBook Pro. There is more though. There's stuff that was not mentioned or glossed over, and one of those being, of course, the 16 gig of memory in the base models. It did appear to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, Eric, but I think the MacBook Pros start at 512 gig of storage, whereas
Yeah.
the iMac
Yeah.
starts at 256. Hopefully,
Right.
I'm right
Yep.
on that. I don't have them pulled
No,
up in front of me. Um,
you
Nano
are.
texture display. So a nice harkening back to when we could get matte displays on MacBook Pros, which I always did. I don't know if you did that too, but I remember my
I
17
did.
inch MacBook Pro was a matte display, and I loved it. I
Yep.
love that display. So
I did too. I really liked the matte display, and
yeah,
I don't know if I would like the nano texture as much, but I did like the matte.
I will admit I have not seen nano texture displays in person. So
Yeah, I haven't
I will
either.
have to see it to see what I think about it in real usage, in real world experience. But
Yep.
it's nice that it's offered. And oh, I already
It
mentioned this,
is.
the 12 megapixel center stage camera, up to 120 gigabytes of memory, and up to an 8 terabyte SSD, which, by the way, was also offered on the Mac Mini. And then this is one of those techie weasel phrases, but support for up to 4 external displays.
Yeah.
Make sure if you're looking at the lower end models and you need external displays, read those tech specs and make sure that the model that you're looking at is going to support the number of displays that you are looking to push with that model.
Right.
But nice lineup of MacBook Pros. What about the MacBook Pros caught your attention, if anything?
Well, you know what? Actually, I've got I've got a M3 Max MacBook Pro, so um, that I had pretty much maxed out when I got it.
Mm,
So it there wasn't a huge amount of difference, although I think there's a few more cores, and I think although I think I was trying to think the base model, I think with mine came with 36 gigabyte as well, of memory.
Because it was a
Um,
max. Yeah, the max
yeah,
starts at 32, right? Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And I was trying to think though. I think the new one is 14 core CPU and 32 core GPU, and I want to say I think mine is 12 core and 32, something
Hmm.
like that. So yeah, and I haven't really looked at the specs as far. I think when I did look at it, it was about, I figured, about like 22% faster, which is, nothing to sneeze at, but it's also not, you know, 2 times or 3 times faster. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. And in terms of CPU cores, you can upgrade to 16 CPU cores.
that's right.
And
Yeah.
that upgrade, I believe, also gets you 40 core GPU,
Okay.
right? I have
Oh
that
yeah,
right.
yeah. Yep,
16
that's
core
right.
CPU, 40 core GPU. But that is an upgrade. When you upgrade to that level, you're getting both of those.
Right. You get an
Yeah.
extra, right. You have to, yeah, and that starts getting pretty pricey at that, because I think the max starts out at 3,200, I want to say.
No real
Yeah.
price increases. That's a good
No.
point. No real price increases this time
No.
around, and that's fantastic,
Yeah.
especially with
No.
the memory upgrades.
Yeah, actually, and that is really kind of nice. And it, like you said, it also shows. Sorry, the dog. I don't know if you can pick that up.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry.
um, that's with the door closed. So can you imagine how loud it would be otherwise? Um, no, and so like I think you said, obviously it doesn't cost them anywhere near the $200 um, to upgrade memory,
Yeah.
which we knew. So
Other than that, the big takeaway for me is that there was in all the videos, and in fact on Apple's site right now, if you go look at it as we speak, there's tons of emphasis on there never being a better time to upgrade, and specifically, big pushes to upgrade from Intel and M1 Macs, and as I mentioned while you had stepped out for a moment to kind of non-recording time, uh, I'm not sure if most M1 users need to upgrade. Again, Apple did such a good job with Apple Silicon. They made so many improvements with Apple Silicon in terms of performance, in terms of efficiency, that if you are currently sporting an M1 Mac, you need to have a really compelling reason to look at getting something new. And as you said, maybe Apple Intelligence is it. Maybe that's the thing that pushes you toward the new models. But if you're a daily driver, I don't know. I don't know.
yeah, I outside of the Mac Mini, I haven't. There wasn't anything super compelling with the other ones that made me want to just upgrade. Of course, um, I have a MacBook Pro and I just got it recently, so
Hmm.
obviously. But
Me too. I can't even look at the new ones. I just got
I
this
know,
one in June.
yeah, same here, exactly the same. So no, what was I going to say? I have to. I would definitely think the Mac Mini. That is the one that kind of surprised me the most, and the most that was got me excited anyway. I have to hang out 1 second and get the dog out.
We're going to
Okay.
corral a dog.
Yes.
Yes. Uh-oh. Eric's been taken out. Oh no. Oh no. The carnage. The inhumanity. The humanity. Oh, the humanity. Oh dear. This is the joys of recording live. You know, I always tell everyone who watches the video after the fact, what you are watching is the warts and all recording of For Mac Eyes Only. For 16 years, I think we've been doing the live streams for 2 years now. For 16 years, we recorded, you know, as we could, and this kind of stuff happened. Getting the dog out of the room, or cat scratching at the door, which my cats have been doing, or needing to take a break, or any of that kind of stuff. This has been happening, people. This is what goes on during a recording session, and what you
Right.
missed for 16 years. This is what you missed, and now you get the joys of seeing the warts and all recording of For Mac Eyes Only
Yeah.
for 2 years now. I know it's not everyone's cup of tea, but if you like that
Yeah.
kind of stuff, this is what we're here for. This is why we're
Don't you
doing it
feel lucky?
live. Don't you feel lucky? Those of
Yeah.
you watching right now, don't you feel lucky that you get to see all this behind the scenes stuff that doesn't make the final cut of the show, as I say at the end.
Right.
But let's see, where were we? Yeah, so my end thought on Apple Silicon and M4s, these are phenomenal machines. If you are looking to upgrade from Intel, just run. Don't even walk. Run to the M4 Max, because
Yeah.
you won't believe the difference in day-to-day, just how smooth the Mac works, how much more performance you get from simple things like
Yeah.
launching applications, boot times. You remember when you used to have to reboot your Mac, and you'd be like, oh, I don't want to reboot my Mac. I don't have 5 minutes to reboot my Mac.
I know.
That's not a thing anymore.
No.
Just the overall operation. I'm losing the words here, but the overall operational differences between an Apple Silicon Mac, even an M1 Apple Silicon Mac, and an Intel Mac are just night and day. If you're still using, and keeping in mind that Intel Macs they're on their last legs. We are not going to see support in Mac OS for Intel Macs much longer. Maybe next year, but from the conversations we have on the show here that every year more and more models are getting peeled off. And that, artificially or not, they are not going to have support from Apple sooner than later.
Right.
So if you are at all considering the upgrade to Apple Silicon, this is the time to do it. The iMac, the M4 iMac, the Mac Mini, and the MacBook Pros, no matter which one of those models you're looking at, are all going to be just phenomenal choices. If you're on a little bit older Apple Silicon Mac, I'd say, if you can, go into the store and try it. Try the tasks that you perform on a daily basis and see how they feel to you. Keeping in mind that the Macs on display are often tuned for better performance, or they're stripped down. They're not running as many apps in the background as you might be running at home.
Right.
They're running slightly different versions of the apps than you might be running at home. But try them if you can. Visit a friend's home who has an M3 or M4 and see how it performs when compared to your older model of Apple Silicon. But the fact is, Apple just made Apple Silicon too good.
Yeah.
Too good. It's not like the Intel Core Duo that we started with when we switched to the Intel. This is the M1 Apple Silicon system on a chip is phenomenal. We said it when it was released. I'm going to say it now. Yes, the M4 is better, but if you're on M1, consider what you're doing before you leap out and do that upgrade.
Yeah.
Okay, so what else has been going on in the world of Mac, Eric? There are at least 2 items I want to bring up very quickly. The first of which is pretty darn big news, and I don't know what you think about this. I definitely want to hear what you think about this, though, and that is Apple buying Pixelmator.
Yeah.
Yes, Apple purchased what some claim is one of Adobe's biggest competitors. Now, I don't know if I would go that far.
Yeah.
I
I don't
kind of
either.
feel as if Affinity's apps may be a bigger competitor to Adobe's products than Pixelmator, but Pixelmator is darn good. Specifically, if you need to do things like remove backgrounds, the machine language or machine learning background removal in Pixelmator is just fantastic. And you turned me on to that, Eric. Um, but here we've got a $50 app that does vector illustration, does bitmap illustration, and a little bit of photo management, a little bit of raw management. I don't think I would necessarily call it a Lightroom competitor, but what do you think? Is this going to be a good move for Pixelmator? It's definitely a good move for Apple. And is it something that Adobe should be worried about?
Yeah, that's definitely a good question. And they've actually improved their raw processing, although, like you said, I don't know if it would consider it a Lightroom competitor, but they definitely have improved it. And I actually have kind of gone to, I used to use Photoshop, you know, exclusively
Me too.
to, I pretty much just use Pixelmator. I do use Affinity Photo for some stuff. And I think you're right. I think Affinity is more of a competitor just because it has designer and publisher as well. Um, but yeah, I think this is good for Apple. Probably good for Pixelmator too, in the sense that um, the company, it probably made them wealthy. So obviously, if Apple bought that, purchased that, um, it depends. I guess it remains to be seen what Apple does with it and how they utilize it. If they do something like they did with shortcuts, way back when they purchased Workflow, I know people have kind of had this sort of, oh no, they're going to ruin it, they're going to mess this up, and they whatever. And certainly that could happen, but if you look at it, they purchased Final Cut Pro, they purchased Logic,
Mm-hmm.
and I think in those cases they've made it better in both cases, and as well as with shortcuts with Workflow. You know, when they purchased Workflow, I was kind of concerned that, oh, they're gonna dumb this down, they're gonna make it worse, they're gonna do whatever. But they turned it into shortcuts and they've made it better. And so I'm kind of looking forward to seeing what they do with Pixelmator. Now I'm hoping that they don't, like somehow gut Pixelmator and roll stuff into their Photos app. I'm hoping that they keep Pixelmator and make it as, just keep making it as a really excellent image editor app that it is, as well as graphics and stuff like that. And I guess we won't know until we know. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm cautiously optimistic. I'm hoping that this, you know, is gonna be fortuitous and it's gonna be a good thing for the application, and we'll have to see.
The first thought I had was, could this be the beginnings of a new version of Aperture?
Yeah,
Uh,
that would be awesome.
you
Yeah,
know, with Pixelmator always providing just fantastic integration with Photos,
yeah,
almost since day one. Since
yeah,
Photos has been released, the ability to integrate as a third-party app, the ability to integrate within Photos and make your tools available to those who manage their pictures with Photos. Uh, Pixelmator's been there almost since the beginning, if not since
yeah,
the beginning.
yeah,
And more so than things like, say, Acorn or Affinity Photo or what have you.
yeah,
I think the Pixelmator integration has always been fantastic.
yeah,
And Pixelmator's raw photo processing, the photo editing, and to some extent the vector tools that are available to users. I see their vector tools as being a little bit more like Photoshop's vector tools, where they're meant to be used within a photo editing
Right.
construct versus an Illustrator-like construct. You know, it's not. I don't
Construct,
really
right.
see Pixelmator's vector tools being designed to replace Illustrator or being designed
No.
to replace Affinity Designer. They're more
Yeah.
to augment what you can do with a photo, you know, like
Right.
scale text and artwork
Yeah.
and, you know, things like that within your photo editing tasks. But to have those tools built permanently into photos may be a step in a new direction for Apple in terms of providing a true Lightroom competitor. That
Yeah.
you know, Aperture certainly was, but
Oh,
this could really bring it to the next level, and that may be what the long-term plans are. I think the key here is what's said on Pixelmator's website when they say what should you expect. Well, one, this is subject to approval. It has to go through
right.
regulatory approval. But
Right.
two, they say there will be no material changes to the Pixelmator Pro, Pixelmator for iOS, and Photomator apps at this time.
Yeah. At this
And
time.
those three words are key to what the future may hold for us, and we don't know what they mean yet. Like you said, we
No.
won't know until we know. But that's key. Then they say stay tuned for exciting updates to come. Well,
What
I want to
exciting.
know. I want to know. Inquiring minds want to know what's to come.
What's the
Uh,
exciting updates?
Certainly a good purchase. Pixelmator has been one of
Yeah.
our favorite apps. I know it's your primary photo editing app.
Yeah.
It's my secondary photo editing app, but like I said, you turned me on to its background removal tools, and they're just fantastic. And when I need to remove a complicated background from an image, Pixelmator is where I always turn to first. And it's definitely worth the investment. I mean, you're talking $50 for this. What is the regular price for Affinity Photo? Like $70, 69, 59, something
Yeah,
like
I
that.
think so. Yeah.
Whatever the regular price is, or you get their entire suite that includes the Mac and Windows and iPad versions, all for $169 or whatever it is. Even that, even if you buy the entire suite not on Black Friday specials, and you buy Pixelmator Pro not on a Black Friday special, hint, hint, if you're looking at getting either of them, they always go on sale at Black Friday. Um, the cost of those two combined is still a much, much better value than
Oh,
subscribing
yeah.
to Adobe's Creative Suite.
Adobe. Right. Exactly.
And about the only thing
For
that
sure.
might get someone to switch to or want to use Adobe's Creative Suite is Premiere Pro. And in a 1-2 punch to Adobe, Apple also released, while we were on break, Final Cut Pro 11, uh, dropping the X or the 10 in the name, which I think they've kind of done for a little while now, but it's now
Yeah.
Final Cut Pro 11. As Apple says, faster and smarter than ever, new AI enhanced tools, better workflow improvements, and of course, spatial video improvements for those who are looking to create content for the Vision Pros. The thing that really impressed me, and we mentioned this very briefly before recording, is the new AI magnetic mask. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Oh my
Yep.
gosh. There was a particularly complicated video that you had asked me once if I could help on, and I kept it. You sent it to me and I kept it because one day I'm going to sit down and I'm going to try to figure out how to do this easily. Well, that
Yeah.
day has come.
It's come. Yeah.
It was a situation, we won't get into details of what the video was, but you had a situation where there was green screen behind. Well, I should let you explain it. Let me let you explain what the
Yeah.
project was, and then we'll talk about what magnetic mask did for us.
Yeah. The green screen, and what I did not expect, it was just enough. It was a smaller green screen, and I wanted to do it outside. And so I thought, okay, I'll take this one and we'll do it out. Unfortunately, the person moved his hands outside of the green screen. And so and kept talking. So as you can imagine, that pretty much cuts off his arms. So
Right.
you lose everything that's not in front of the green screen. So the only way to deal with that is to try to rotoscope it back in, which is like select each each part of his arms and hands for each frame.
Yeah.
And yeah, so so that was that. So that is the dilemma that I had. And the magnetic mask did not exist for Final Cut Pro at the time, so I did it a different way, and I had to do it manually and rotoscope it each. Although in Adobe After Effects, the rotoscoping is a little bit better in the fact that you can just kind of draw a line into the arm or the finger or whatever, and it'll select that object. Not as sweet as what it is now, but it was better than actually having to, outline every little thing.
Now, to talk about the process that you did end up using, is there any interpolation there? And in other words, can you set keyframes and say, okay, here's the arm selected here, here's the arm selected here, and it was After Effects you used?
Yeah,
Yeah, and let
there
After Effects interpolate the movement of the arm in between those.
there is a little bit of that. Unfortunately, it would just get off really
Mm.
quick. So at the most I could do is maybe 3-4 frames. And so generally speaking, I pretty much just went through frame by frame, because it would just fall off so quickly. So, but
And
yeah,
now, yeah, and now I'll say you do video editing professionally. I do not. I have no professional skill set in video editing. I'm pretty much limited to what I do for MacStock or for my own projects. But uh, I decided to give this magnetic mask a try, and with absolutely no focus or with any in purposeful intent. I just sat down to try to learn how this magnetic mask worked, highlighted the subject of your video, including, his arms. You actually kind of set keyframes. You kind of tell it, okay, here's a part of the video where the hands extended out beyond the green screen. So you add that into your mask at that keyframe. They don't call them keyframes, but I think of it as a keyframe.
yeah,
And then you move along and you say, okay, here's his spot where his other hand moved out the frame, highlight that and add it to the mask. And then you go back to the beginning, you say analyze video, and Final Cut Pro goes through the video frame by frame, and you can literally watch it adjusting the mask as it goes through every single frame. And you think, oh, well, it's a little bit off there, it's a little bit off there. But the final result, with no deliberate intent put into making this good at all, was pretty darn good. There was a
yeah.
little bit of
It's
fringing.
amazing.
There's a little bit of fringing. It wasn't quite as
Yeah,
clean of a mask as I would like, and I'm sure I could adjust, how much of that masking is applied outside of the mask and how much is applied. I'm sure I could apply that a little bit, but I put no effort into it, and it
right.
did a pretty darn good job. I was amazed at how well of a
Yeah,
job it did at removing that background and masking out just the subject. And the entire process, I kid you not, probably took about 5 minutes,
yeah. It
which
is
is
just
just
amazing.
crazy. Yeah,
It is.
totally amazing. And
Now, it's
even
really
more
good.
amazing, this upgrade to Final Cut Pro 11 is free for existing users, which it's this is Apple's opportunity to say, hey, you know what? we're going from version 10 to version 11. There's going to be an upgrade. You're going to have to pay for this upgrade. No, it's just a free upgrade for anyone who purchased Final Cut Pro 6 years ago. Here you go. Here's the new version.
Yep.
Enjoy. And it's just crazy. It's just crazy.
Or somebody's purchased it 14 years ago.
14 years ago. Yeah.
And yeah, it's just yeah, I keep thinking that they're going to start charging for it, or they're gonna do a subscription or whatever, and they never do. And but they keep coming out with updates, and this was a welcome update. They had the tracker, which is great. I think part of it, they probably felt like they kind of needed to do something like this because DaVinci Resolve has long had a mask, a really good masking utility in that, and rotoscope thing, and there were a lot of different plugins available to do the same thing. So, but it just, like you said, it's amazing for the amount of effort that you have to put into it for what it can do. It's really, really something. It's just, and I've had, like I said, I've had third party ones that that has worked, but I've had to go back and fill in some gaps, because it, for whatever reason, didn't stick with it. So yeah, it's really amazing.
Yeah.
Really, really a welcome addition.
Really a welcome addition. Now, some of the other additions that Apple has made, and this is another biggie, they actually put the amazing new features at the top of their list, unlike what they did with the Macs, but transcribe to captions. This is a new feature that allows you to automatically create captions from the spoken audio in your video, in your timeline, with built-in AI language models. Apple
Works great.
Does it work? I have not had a chance to test it. Apple said it works, obviously with speed and accuracy. You are going to need a Mac with Apple Silicon, and you are going to need a Mac with Sequoia or later. But other than that, yeah, goodness gracious, right in the video. This is something, or right in the editor. This is something that we used to have to spend big bucks to send out and have someone else transcribe and create the captions for us, or use a service to do it, or purchase a third-party add-on to do this kind of thing, or what have you. But now it's right there in Final Cut. Now, I've heard some mixed reviews of it. You say it works pretty well, though?
Yeah, I haven't used it. I just used it for one video, and not for the entire video, but for a part of it. And it worked well. I mean, I had to make a few minor corrections, but it was more or less just kind of, it put a period someplace, and I think, or I wanted it to put a period and start a new sentence or whatever, but it got all the words right. It really is quite amazing. I mean, and Final Cut Pro has always had the ability to do captions, but you've had to manually enter all of that stuff yourself, and something I've just never wanted to deal with, so I never have. And
it's becoming more important.
Yeah, it is. It is. It really, really is, actually. And so, no, it's that is another welcome addition, another real welcome feature.
Yeah. Just running down the list here, some of the other new things that came to Final Cut Pro. Import and edit spatial video clips for either from the Apple Vision Pro or from the iPhone 15 Pro or later. Titles, color correction effects, share captivating spatial projects that can be viewed on the Vision Pro. Reduce clutter in the browser by automatically hiding original clips when creating sync clips or multicam clips. Vertical zoom to fit, to scale clip heights to fit in the timeline. That's kind of nice. Speed up your creative flow with new picture-in-picture and call-out effects. Again, things that we used to handle with third-party add-ons now are native to Final Cut Pro. New modular transitions. new keyboard shortcuts. Oh, that's fantastic. It's great to see keyboard jockeys addressed with the latest release.
Yeah.
New keyboard shortcuts are for common tasks in the browser and the timeline. And then the ability to install third-party media extensions to support playback and editing of more video formats. So, we talked about Apple feeling the pressure from Blackmagic. Uh, Certainly, Adobe is feeling the pressure from both Apple
Oh,
and Blackmagic. And, I don't know. Maybe that purchase of Pixelmator is is going to bring us a whole new suite of
yeah.
tools for the pro market that we just can't envision yet. And Pixelmator is certainly going to be a good base for that.
Yeah, and I was gonna say I forgot to mention this, but one thing Pixelmator's long had a part of it is you can actually save your file or whatever as a motion file
Hmm.
um, to be used in Motion. Now, Motion will take in Photoshop files with layers and everything, but in Pixelmator, you can save a file with multiple layers and save it as a motion file and bring it right in. And that actually is pretty slick too. So, again, that could be something that Apple is looked at or whatever. I have no idea, but it is pretty another cool feature of Pixelmator that I have used.
I completely forgot about Pixelmator's video editing tools.
Yeah, that's right. It does have that too. Yeah.
And as you mentioned, the ability to export to motion files, and then the thought occurring to me of the video editing tools, I wonder if Pixelmator might become a fourth product in the Final Cut Pro suite.
Yeah.
We've got three
You
now.
wonder.
We've got Compressor and
Right.
Motion and Final Cut.
Motion. Yeah.
Perhaps something like Pixelmator, with its ability to kind of straddle the line, if you will, between Final Cut and Motion and, well, even Compressor to a certain extent. Perhaps that's the fourth leg in that suite.
Yeah. That's a good point actually. And you do kind of wonder. Yeah.
Okay, well, as I said last episode before we got to the topic, let's get to some fun stuff. Now, last time out, we addressed a number of migration questions from listener Lisa, but in her case, while we did answer a lot of her migration questions off the air, as it were, and we focused instead on photo migration and music migration and things like that on the show, we did have a question from another listener, Michael, who asked a fantastic follow up migration question where he wanted to know, I have a Time Machine drive of my old Intel Tower and will be migrating to the M4 in a few weeks. Now, this came in before the announcement of the M4s, but I imagine Michael has placed his order already. Um,
Right.
his question, though, was, does migrating import the Intel versions of apps and supporting files and things like that, or only Apple Silicon versions? I don't want to bring in any Intel garbage, but I also don't want to spend a week reinstalling and setting up email accounts and everything else. Well, this is a fantastic question. And you'll remember, Eric, we did actually address this with Lisa via
Yeah.
email, but we didn't cover it on that episode because we were talking about her photo library migrations. But we will cover it now. Here's my experience, and then I want to get your input too on this, Eric. My experience is when you migrate from an Intel Mac to an Apple Silicon Mac, whether it be an M1 or even an M4, which is awesome, third-party Intel-only apps will migrate over from your old Mac to the new Mac. That will happen. If it's an Intel only version of a third party
Right.
app, that's going to come over. If you have already upgraded them to universal binary versions, which you probably have, if your Mac was new enough that you could get the upgrades to the latest releases of apps. In some cases, you'll be upgraded to a universal version, which is Apple Silicon and Intel. And in some cases, and I remember this being the case for Zoom, I believe, it would specifically say, hey, we see you're on, it didn't say it this way, but we see you're on an Apple Silicon Mac. We want to upgrade you to the Apple Silicon version of Zoom. And then it would download and install the ARM version or the Apple Silicon version of the app. I seem to recall that's what happened with Zoom. Excuse me. That's what happened with Zoom. Most apps, however, have universal versions. Apps like Firefox and Microsoft Office and whatever. They have long since upgraded to a version that runs on both Intel and Apple Silicon. And of course, those will migrate over very, very nicely.
Right.
If, as I mentioned, if the app provides an ARM binary for Apple Silicon, you might be prompted after the migration. So you do the migration, the Intel version comes over, and then, like in the case of Zoom, you'll be prompted to upgrade after the migration is complete. So yes, the Intel garbage will come over initially, but then it'll be upgraded to Apple Silicon later, or upgraded to a universal version later.
Yeah.
And then, unfortunately, there are the apps that make you seek out the Apple Silicon edition yourself. And there are quite a few of them, especially from independent developers. There's a lot of developers that release an Intel binary, they release an ARM binary or Apple Silicon binary, but they don't prompt you. They don't say, hey, you just upgraded to Apple Silicon. You gotta upgrade to. No, you have to seek it out. You have to check and see if that developer has released either a universal binary version or a specific ARM version for Apple Silicon. So that is essentially the order that I approached things when I made the same move. First, prior to the migration, I upgraded anything that can be upgraded to a universal binary. So I went through my applications folder, looked at everything, not counting the Apple apps, not counting apps provided by Apple, but third-party apps. I looked at all those apps and said, hey, is this already universal binary? And you can check that by right-clicking and selecting properties on the context menu, and it'll tell you Intel, universal, what have you. Upgrade all those that can be to universal binaries, and then just before the migration, I would delete, or better yet, archive any apps from the old Mac that I really didn't want on the new Mac prior to running my final time machine or a final clone backup that I'm going to use in the migration. Then I would migrate. And then after the migration on the new Mac, I launched any apps that I normally use and just see what prompts me to upgrade to ARM versions or let them do automatically. Like I said, Zoom did that when I migrated. It said, hey, there's an ARM version. You got to upgrade. Okay, cool. And I did. And then finally, I migrated those apps that required it. For example, and I do have a couple examples I shared with Michael, the open source app Joplin that we talked about here on the show, the open source app Audacity, and OBS Studio. Those all require that I manually downloaded and replace the binaries with ARM versions. And then, like I said a moment ago, as far as the Apple apps are concerned, those are going to be ready to go after the migration.
Oh, yeah.
Because the versions that are on the M4 Mac will be newer than what's on your backup. And Migration Assistant is super, super smart about that. And it does a great job of not migrating the older releases when a newer release exists already. So those are going to be Apple Silicon ready. So you don't have to worry about the old Apple apps that are on your Intel Mac, unless you have like an old version of iMovie or what was the DVD authoring app that Apple made? Um,
The what?
the DVD authoring app or the iBooks
Oh,
author or some of these apps that don't
right,
exist
right.
anymore. If
Yeah,
if if you don't use them because they're just old
iDVD.
and they're just iDVD and they're
Yeah,
just cruft and they're sitting around on your Mac and you don't use them,
right.
well you can get rid of those before you make your final backup and then they
Yeah,
won't be migrated at all. But if you forget one and it gets migrated and there's just no chance in
I,
heck it's ever going to be upgraded because it's just too old and it's been discontinued
yeah,
and heck might not even run on the new Mac even with an Intel emulator, well then you just delete them later. Um, what I would really like is if Apple allowed me to import specific things like email settings, which is something that Michael mentioned, if I could just say only import my email settings or only import my Safari settings or something like that on a granular basis, that would be great. Because while you can migrate only certain users from the old Mac, and you can decide whether you want to move a particular user's documents and pictures and music. When it comes to a user's settings, it's all or nothing. Um, and I don't think anything has changed in that regard.
no, I don't think so either.
Um, but you can opt to not bring over applications from the old Mac if you really want to start fresh there. But I really think he'd be generally okay migrating them over. Although being able to migrate only certain apps would be great too. So I want to get Eric's input on this, but there is a really good help article from Apple with screenshots, but it doesn't for some reason doesn't show what options you have when you click that little disclosure triangle next to a user. But if you opt not to migrate documents, for example, you just click that little disclosure triangle and then you uncheck documents. But the good news is, you mentioned mail accounts. Your accounts will migrate over just fine. Just keep in mind that you will probably need to re-sign in to each one of those accounts after the migration, and that's for your own security. What do you think, Eric? What have we left out, or what? I know you had some thoughts on migrating from an old Intel Mac to Apple Silicon. What has been your experience?
I was just trying to think. I think you covered everything there. And I for some reason I was thinking if there was an app that will definitely not work, that migration assistant wouldn't bring it over, but um obviously you it sounds like it will.
I'm pretty
But
sure they do come
um
over.
yeah,
I could be wrong on that, or there may have been a tweak since I did it, but I'm pretty sure apps have come over because I had apps in my application folder that had the little, no symbol over them because they weren't compatible.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I don't yeah, I think you covered everything that I can think of. Um Yeah. I'm always leery of using migration assistant because I'm always worried. Well, yeah, I don't want it to bring over the problems that I have with the that I might be having with the old machine to the new machine, but otherwise it does work like magic, and it is worth using.
Now, you did have a situation where you were having some really weird problems with your Mac, and I believe, didn't you do a migration? Didn't you do a backup and then reinstall Mac OS and then migrate from the backup? Or am I misremembering how you fixed that?
No, yeah, ultimately that's what I did. I did have some trouble with the migration assistant, and it was really weird. It was between two different. It was all Intel, but it was, and this was quite a while ago. But it was between um, two different MacBook Pros, and I think something had changed. There was some changes, and there was a hardware changes, but also if it affected the software too, the software that was with it, and for whatever reason, and I can't remember. This has been quite a while now, but yeah, it was some really weird issue. And it was kind of like, I think Migration Assistant maybe just screwed it up because it was, you know, there was changes to MacBook Pros from one year to the next. And maybe there was something that Apple hadn't counted on or something. I can't remember. But I have since used Migration Assistant and have had good luck with it.
But now I thought it
At
was a
that
more
particular time.
recent problem you had. Didn't you have a problem with your,
Oh,
and you
yeah.
reinstalled, didn't you?
Yes, I did. I was having all kinds of weird stuff happening with my Mac. And let's see, what was it? I was having trouble with apps just I couldn't. There was several apps that when I launch them, they crash right away. I get the little report, the crash thing. I can never get them started. And there was some other really weird stuff too that happened, that I was just pulling my hair out. In fact, I created a new user and just tried to reinstall everything by itself, and it worked for a while, but the same stuff happened. And I had even did a reinstall of Mac OS and didn't affect it. Finally, when Sequoia came out, I installed Sequoia, and I normally wouldn't have done it that soon, but I thought, what the heck? I can't work, I can't be any worse than what it is now, because I was pretty much at my wit's edge, and wit's end, and I was gonna, thinking about deleting everything and reinstalling everything. And I thought, if this update to Sequoia works, it'll be easier than that. And that did it. For whatever reason, that fixed whatever issues that were going on. And I haven't had that kind of stuff happen since. So I keep my fingers crossed. But that was
And
that was weird.
I feel like that's very similar. What you went through in terms of upgrading to Sequoia is very similar to Michael's situation, where he would be migrating from an Intel Mac to an Apple Silicon Mac. If there was any weirdness in there, the fact that the new Mac is running Sequoia, or should be running Sequoia when he gets it, uh, should override any weird system settings that might be on that older Mac
Yeah.
and would not migrate over because Sequoia supersedes them.
Yeah.
Not preferences, mind you. You know, software preferences might migrate over and still be there, but system or operational weirdness like you had may be repaired as well during a migration.
Yeah. Yeah. It must have did something that it fixed whatever. What I don't understand is why, when I did the reinstall of what was it, Sonoma Ventura,
Yeah.
uh, prior to that, why that didn't fix it, but then installing Sequoia did. Unless there's when you do the upgrade, there might be quite a bit more work that's being done there than just a simple install in place thing.
Right. Right. Hmm. So
Yeah.
I hope that helps, Michael. I can't wait to hear how everything goes. You got to let us know not only which M4 Mac you got, but how well the migration went. And
Yeah.
if the
Yeah.
migration went poorly, my name is Eric.
And my name's Mike.
Well, we are going to wrap things up this episode with another one of our essential app picks. Now, we had our top essential apps episode back in January, but we had so many apps that we wanted to introduce to everyone that we decided to introduce a new essential app every episode. And I don't think we've missed one yet, Eric. And
No.
last episode, you talked about an app called Display Buddy. And
Yep.
I thought that was pretty cool. But I found something that is much, much simpler, but maybe no less cool. I don't know. I'm curious what you think about this. But this is an app called DeskPad. And DeskPad
Oh.
is a virtual monitor for your Mac. Here's how it works. When you run DeskPad, it doesn't do anything except create a virtual display within an application window that you can then share with others. So, for example, if you need to share a display with a Zoom call, or I needed to share a display with you here over Ecamm, I could share this virtual display with you, clear of any cruft, clear of all the normal stuff that I have on my desktop, but a nice, clean virtual display that I can put applications in, I can put windows in, I can run presentations within, but it's all not a physical display, but a virtual display. So when you launch DeskPad,
That's interesting.
it is the equivalent, and I don't know how this works, but it is the equivalent of plugging in an additional monitor. That virtual display shows up in your display settings within system settings just like any other external display does. It allows you to change the resolution, it allows you to change the wallpaper, it allows you to change its arrangement, where it is in relation to your other displays, but it's a floating window on your desktop. So, what makes this super cool is what I mentioned a moment ago. You can show a keynote presentation in it. You could show PowerPoint. You could put a Finder window in it. You can put a web browser in it. Whatever you put in that virtual display is just like a physical display, and you can share it just like a physical display. But because it's virtual, you can close it down at any time, and it just goes away.
Wow.
So you don't have to worry about pre-cleaning
That's
up
so
your
cool.
desktop of all your icons, or you don't have to worry about an app that might be running that you don't want to show to people. You just launch this virtual
Right.
display and share that virtual display. You move your cursor to it just like you would any other physical display. And the neat thing about it is that when you do move your cursor to it, the window title changes to blue so that you know that's the active display that you are
Play.
on. It's a very, very
Wow.
simple app. There are literally no settings to it. It's you run
That's
it,
insane.
you get a virtual display. Now, I set the virtual display to 1920 by 1080. By default, it goes to a much higher resolution, but I set it to just standard HD display. There are no preferences. The only option in the menu for a DeskPad is quit. That's it. But when I launch this app, I have this floating window. If I click in it, I get the dock at the bottom. I have the menu bar at the top, just like any other physical display, and I can drag and drop windows to it and icons to it, and I can run presentations in it. And guess what, Eric? DeskPad is free. It's on
Oh,
GitHub,
sweet.
github.com/stingo/deskpad. And this is going to be an immensely indispensable app for me, especially with things like Ecamm.
Yeah,
To share a
that is
display with
totally
you,
sweet.
what blows me away is that it's not just a virtual display, but as far as the Mac is concerned, it is a display. I can go
Yeah.
into the system settings. I can change the resolution of it. I can change, like I said, I can change the wallpaper on it. And I can even change its arrangement so that whichever direction I move the cursor, that's the display it ends up on. Completely free, very easy to use. The only thing that happens when you launch it the first time is the Mac says it needs screen recording permissions. That's it. That's it. And then you have a
Wow.
floating virtual display. What I wish you could do, though, is from the menu, launch additional virtual displays. Imagine this only launches one virtual display, that's it. So just think of it, if you have two monitors, just think of it as a third monitor. It would be cool if from the menu of DeskPad you could say, launch a second virtual display, launch a third virtual display, and then you could put those virtual displays all on a single display. That would be really cool. But just to be able to launch a single virtual display, and think of it as ad hoc. So like a Mac that can only support one external display should be able to run DeskPad and have a second display. Keeping in mind it's a window on that second display or on your primary display. But gosh darn, this is cool, super useful, and that is my essential app pick for this episode. DeskPad, the virtual monitor for your Mac. And a link for that will be in the show notes.
I never had heard of that, and I can't believe I haven't, because that sounds totally awesome, and I'm going to get it as soon as we hang up here. That is totally cool.
I will text you the link as soon as we're done.
Yeah.
And
that is nice.
With that said, that's going to do it for this episode of For Mac Guys Only. I hope everyone enjoyed it. Remember, we do love to get your letters. So if you have any comments about the show, a tip to share, or a software or hardware problem with your Mac, or you'd like to comment, or you'd like to share your thoughts, forget it. I'm not even going to say that. You can leave your thoughts in this week's show notes found at formatguysonly.com, or you can drop me a line, mike@formatguysonly.com. And do be sure to subscribe to the show's YouTube channel at youtube.com/FMEOTV and click the little notification bell so you can find out when we are going live. You can join the chat room, and you can catch all the behind the scenes stuff that doesn't make the final cut of the show. Eric, what's the best way for folks to get a hold of you?
The best way to get a hold of me would be eric@formatguysonly.com. It's terrific email.
Yeah. Oh, we're getting slap happy.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for listening, everyone. Thanks to Eric for joining me this episode. Stay subscribed, and we'll talk to you next time. All righty. There we go. Now,
no
cueing the music.
No cueing the music.
The end card. Bye, everyone. Talk to you next time.